Hey everybody, it's Hawk here. And my last video went over fairly well, talking about all the reasons it would totally suck to be an adventurer. And someone pointed out that, hey, it'd be real neat if I talked about other stuff like that. So I'm kind of doing that. What I'm going to do is, and this is going to be a special for Halloween, because it kind of fits, we're talking about absolutely horrible, nasty things, and there's going to be plenty of horror elements in that. So I'm setting a challenge for myself. For the next 10 days, it's going to, well, counting today, it'll be the 10 days of Halloween. I'm going to put out one video every day talking about some horrible, nasty monster. Now, the rules for this are simple. It just has to be a monster that could exist in a fantasy universe, and it has to have been published in an RPG. Or have been in a movie or some other piece of fiction. So, I'll put it this way. Necromorphs can totally be it. Okay, necromorphs could totally happen, even though they were in a sci-fi thing. The way they function, it's a giant obelisk thing. They're created effectively by an ancient curse. I know that's entirely not what it is, but it could conceivably work in a fantasy game. If I stuck it in D&D, it wouldn't look all that weird. Consequently, the Reaper husks from Mass Effect, they're out, because they don't fit right. So we're going to see things that aren't necessarily from D&D, but wouldn't look terribly strange in a D&D game. Now, also, the 10 creatures I'm going to talk about, they're not going to be, I guess you could say, popular. So, I'm not going to talk about goblins, I'm not going to talk about orcs, I'm not going to talk about dragons, I'm not going to talk about zombies, or skeletons, or liches, or vampires, or even werewolves, even though I really like werewolves, because they're all mainstream, for lack of a better term. I'm going to talk about things that are probably a little more underappreciated, a little less used, at least in my experience in playing D&D and other games, or if it comes from a game that's not D&D, something I just don't think you're going to know about. So you might see something from Warhammer 40k, maybe, it depends on what it is. I might leave most of the 40k stuff out, that's kind of in a realm all its own now that I think about that. But you might see stuff from Warhammer Fantasy, that would probably be a little more appropriate, or other such games. So, the 10 I have, they're not in any particular order. They're just going to be put out there in whatever order I make them in. So whenever inspiration strikes, that's what's happening here. So starting today, we're going to talk about a animal. It's just a normal D&D animal that I feel is greatly underappreciated. The Owlbear. Now, the Owlbear has a bit of a reputation for just looking really derpy. And it does look a little derpy. The 4th edition art does it no favors. I much prefer the 3.5 art, where the head actually seems to be... It's much larger than it should be, but it just seems to match the body better. Now, a little bit of facts about the owlbear. The owlbear is about the same size as a grizzly bear. It's not as strong as a brown bear. Whatever. It's not as strong as one of them, but it's stronger than a black bear. And while its stats make it generally inferior in the game to a brown bear, it really shouldn't be. For simple fact of, it has a comparable strength score of 21 compared to 27. Yeah, that's a fairly large difference. Once you kind of get up to that point, the handful of points really stop mattering. Because let's put it that way. Let's put it this way. The average human has a strength score of a 10 or an 11, with a high-end average being probably a 13. That would be the standard rate. And you're adventurers where you're all just freaks of nature anyway, so you all have absolutely ridiculous stats, probably because you're using point buy, or you just got really good rolls. Now, once you hit about 18, every points after that, they don't matter as much as the difference between 10 to 18, generally speaking. So this thing being 21 compared to the brown bear's 26 isn't as big of a difference, because it's stupidly strong to begin with. Now, it has a comparable bite force, probably, to that of a normal bear. Except it has a beak. Now what is there going? Well, what does that mean, Hawk? It's a pair of scissors. It's got a raptor beak on it, which is meant for snipping. Actually, I'd say its beak is very similar to that of a terror bird's. That's devastating. It can slam its head into you like a pick, and it could just crack your skull. I would fully expect it to actually pierce chain. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it would crack the links in your mail hauberk. This gambeson would be useless, even though it's under armor, but this would do nothing to stop that beak. The beak would just slam right into me, and then it would just start ripping me apart like I was nothing. Its claws are very much a secondary weapon, but it still has very large claws. They look far more like talons than claws. It also seems it's far more comfortable standing on its rear legs if the 3.5 art's anything to go by. And on top of this, unlike normal bears, which are they can be a little cranky, owlbears just have a really foul temperament. They're just cranky. They don't like people, they don't like things, and they just kind of want to kill everything. They're just really foul-tempered. So what does all this combine into? This combines into you fighting an extremely angry bear that wants to eat you, with the ability to rip straight through armor. I fully expect if it's to bite you, it would sever your arm. Now, of course, you're going, well, it's not reflected in stats. Yeah, I know it's not reflected in stats. I don't know why a brown bear has a 2d6 bite, and this thing only has a 1d8 bite when it's got a beak. It seems kind of odd to me. But that's the thing about owlbears. It's got all the nice bonuses of a bear, but it's even, I guess, more optimized for what it's trying to do. It's more optimized to be a carnivore, I should say. It's more optimized to be deadly. Because bears, their mouths do all sorts of things. They are omnivores. They eat everything. They'll eat fish, they'll eat dead animals, they'll go kill animals themselves, they'll eat berries, they'll eat roots, they don't really care. An owlbear is a strict carnivore. It's not going to eat anything else. So it has to go kill things. This means it's probably an ambush predator. Be my guess. It's not terribly fast, so I wouldn't expect it to be a pursuit predator, even though it very much has the endurance to do so. So it might be an endurance predator. And this leads to two very terrifying situations. Situation one, you and your buddies are walking down the road, and I have my bill here because if I'm going adventuring, I'm bringing a polearm along because I'm not insane, and as you can see, I am absolutely studded with weaponry. If I had a proper crossbow, I'd probably have that on my back, or maybe a sling or something, but I don't have either of those, so I don't have that at the moment, so I have no ranged weapons right now. So me and my adventuring pals are walking down a country road down to a small village that may be having mysterious cattle killings. And then we're walking down the road and we can get attacked by an owlbear. Now, animal attacks aren't actually terribly common. They're not something that usually happens, because animals generally don't want to go after humans because we're not worth the effort. There's not a whole lot of meat to effort ratio here. There's not a lot of me, there's a lot of bone here. It's just, we're kind of not really worth the effort. Now, if I was an easy kill, sure, but I'm not quite an easy kill anymore. Owlbears are different. Owlbears, as I said, are cranky, they're cantankerous, and they don't like things. So they will happily go and kill you because they're jerks. So, we'll be walking down the road, and then an owlbear will come bursting out of the brush and probably try to eat either the mage or the rogue. Or whatever person's filling those particular roles. The squishy person. They'll go for the squishy person because simple law of nature. Go for the weak thing. Don't go for the big thing covered in metal. Go for the thing that's covered in cloth. By the way, I would be a viable target in this particular situation, other than the fact that I had a giant pointy stick with a choppy bit on it. So now you're dealing with a giant bear that just came out of nowhere and is trying to maul one of your party members, entirely possibly killing one of them. Because it would dive up, it'd just run out, hit them, slam them into the ground, and then rip them apart, and then when they're dead, pick up their body and run off with it. Because with the strength score of that, they can totally pick up a person. In the D&D sense, their light load is 300 pounds. An adventurer in full kit does not weigh 300 pounds. Your average adventurer is going to be out probably 160 to 170. You're probably carrying 50, 60 pounds of crap. You're well within that thing's light weight category, and it can just run right off with you. Now, expanding upon this, there's the second one. This is the endurance predator. It just chases you. Now, this is less of an issue for adventurers, because endurance predator tries to spook you and have you run, to try to chase you down and tire you out. Now, this doesn't work quite so well against humans, because we're designed to do the same trick. Hope that wind's not cutting in. We humans are also endurance predators, so we walk after things until they fall over from exhaustion, and then we just stab them. Or it dies because its heart gives out or something. Same crap happens. So, if you're an adventurer, this is far less of an issue. Unless it shows up in the middle of the night and you don't have armor on. Well, now you're like, oh crap, I need to run. I can't fight a bear in my underwear with my belt knife. So you run. And then it runs after you. Odds are it has way more endurance than you do with a 21 constitution. Now, of course, these are extrapolations of rough stats, but I'll be honest here, your average adventurer doesn't have a constitution in-game of usually over a 14 unless you have a lot of really good stats. I mean, a 16 at best. I've never seen anyone stick at 18 in there unless they were one of 2 classes that actually cares about that stat. Really, it's gonna outrun you, because it's got probably a better fortitude, it's got a much higher con than you, and it can just go forever. So you're going to get exhausted. You're going to get fatigued, then you're going to get exhausted, and then you might pass out. Then it's going to walk over there and just eat you. Because that's what it can do. And that's terrifying. You're being chased through the woods by something the size of, roughly the size of a brown bear, with the head of a bird. Just imagine that. Honestly, think of just how disturbing that must look. You're sitting at a campfire, and I don't know how many of you can actually do this, because I don't know how many of you actually live out in an area where there's not a lot of light pollution. But if you ever just sit with a bonfire and just look out, you really realize why night attacks weren't terribly common in the medieval era. You couldn't see crap. You look out from the bonfire and your vision's pretty garbage. You can't really see, and people looking at you can see you fine because you're highlighted by a fire. It just gets worse. Now, it's an animal, so this is even worse than that, because now it actually blends in properly, because it's a nice tannish brown color. It probably blends in fine with the dappled lighting of the fire on the foliage. On top of this, even if you're in a nice clearing, you don't exactly have a massive line of sight to anything in front of you. You're staring at, I don't know, 10, 15 yards at best of viable sight. It's not terribly good. And that's well within its charge range. It can get there and close that distance very rapidly. Bears are quite faster than people expect them to be. So you just see this, maybe, if you see it at all, this large beak just kind of stick its face out of a bush, and this large owl face. Honestly, I think most adventurers would express confusion. Okay, unless owlbears are reasonably common, or you're familiar with them, that's going to be really weird. Just a large owl head, or hawk head, or, some large bird of prey head, just stuck its face out of a bush, looks at you, and then runs, and now there's a bear attached to it. So yeah, I mean, now the upside is, it is just a bear. Okay, it is, at the end of the day, despite it being a magical creature, it really is just a bear. It's a bear with a weird head and a pair of shears for a mouth. It's not that horrible, I guess, other than the fact that it's just a really aggressive bear. And that is kind of bad in and of itself, but it is still, at its core, a natural problem. It's not, they call it a supernatural problem, but it makes no sense that it is. It should just be an animal. You're not shooting lasers out of its eyes, it's not breathing fire, it's not trying to eat your soul, it's just a big, dumb animal. So at the end of the day, you can solve the problem like it is an animal. And that is to say, a big pointy stick down its throat. Simply brace to charge, slam your polearm of choice up against a tree, and let it impale itself. Because it will impale itself. Because it's a bear, and that's how you hunt bears. Or one of several ways to hunt bears. I would personally prefer to just shoot the bear, but that's me. So, owlbears, frightening, definitely dangerous, but entirely manageable, in the same way that a normal bear or a pack of wolves happens to be entirely manageable. It's just something you need to make sure you're aware of. So if you ever go adventuring out in the wilderness, be sure to ask if there are owlbears around, because they may decide to ambush you. Alright, everybody, hope you enjoyed this nice little video and my little rant about owlbears. I do really enjoy them as a critter to use against my PCs. So I'll see you all next time. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Peace out.